Hundreds of drivers with dozens of teams compete in multiple series with one ultimate goal: to race in the Indianapolis 500. Yet each year, only 33 dreams come true. These are the stories that make up the 33 Dreams of Indy. Welcome back to 33 Dreams of Indy. I'm your host, Robert Earl, and today I am pleased to be joined by Dakota Dickerson. Dakota, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Fantastic. Dakota, 23 years old, San Diego, California. How does someone from San Diego get into the open wheel ranks?
Yeah, so my family was really big into racing. My grandma actually raced go-karts when she was younger, kind of passed that on to my dad, who also raced karts, but they were always big IndyCar fans. They like the Trans Am stuff too. So when Riverside was still around, they used to go watch the races up there. So I started racing karts when I was 6, kind of your classic story, moving up through the local, regional, national ranks through karting. And I was fortunate enough to win a couple scholarships, and that's kind of what kick-started my open wheel career.
So 2015, a Team USA scholarship winner. For those that listen, last year in the Road to Indy, the IndyCar champion in all 3 levels of the Road to Indy were Team USA scholarship winners. And then also, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but then the F3 America's champion was a Team USA. So great pedigree for that. You went from that Team USA scholarship. Tell me about the Skip Barber shootout that you had and the scholarship that you won for USF 2000. What was that experience like?
For sure. I mean, so it all kind of started in late 2014, actually. So when I did the go-karts, the Karts to Cars scholarship, that's what got me a full program in Skip Barber in their summer series. So during that time, we were kind of just still getting grips on open wheel racing. That's when Jeremy came in, and he scouts a lot of great talent. Like you said, I mean, the stats last year for Team USA drivers were fantastic between the Road to Indy and obviously us on the F3 side. But so I got the chance to go overseas, go over to England for a little bit, came back over, and the next week actually was the Skip Barber Championship shootout, which unfortunately is no longer available in that format. Mazda still provides, well, the Road to Indy still provides a scholarship to get into USF 2000, but back then basically what it was a 5-race shootout. You accumulated points over that shootout, and the guy with the most amount of points at the end won. So we won 3 of the 5 races and finished on the podium, and the other 2, which secured us enough points for the championship. So that got us the $200,000 scholarship to go do USF 2000. We went with Afterburner Autosport in 2016, and that was kind of, I guess, our first real professional step towards making our way towards IndyCar.
Mm-hmm. Runner-up on Rookie of the Year with that, and I'm going to piggyback on the Skip Barber. I had the pleasure of attending the Lucas Oil School of Racing shootout this year. So a little bit similar, not so much the on-track, although they were evaluating them every time that they were on track, but it was the whole package that they were looking for. And the winner of that won a full year into their equivalent of Skip Barber, their racing school that goes into that. And so we've got an upcoming episode with Eli Navarro that won that that goes into it. So Eli would even make you feel old as we start to go through this. So runner-up, Rookie of the Year, made the transition then from the USF 2000 to also running the F4. At the time, that wasn't quite as done as much as we've seen it, say, in the last year or two of drivers making the move back and forth. Had a great opportunity open up to you, and you went on the F4 path, correct?
For sure, yeah. I mean, like you said, it wasn't really as common for drivers to bounce in between F4 and USF 2000, kind of like what we're seeing now. F4 was only, when I did it, was only in its 2nd year of running, of operating. They started in 2016. So in 2017, we started off the season with Newman Walks Racing in USF 2000 and kind of ran out of funds. Well, we didn't run out of funds, but we knew that we weren't going to be able to finish the season in USF 2000 based off of our budget. So we kind of went an alternate route and went over to F4 with an opportunity that was going over there. So we managed to do the last half of the season. And kind of when I first was doing F4, I wasn't necessarily thinking that it was going to be something that I could continue on going into F3, but more just something to keep me in open wheel racing, because at the time we weren't really sure what was going to happen for 2017. But as we kind of got more and more success on the on the F4 side of things, another opportunity popped up to do a full championship in 2018 with DC Autosport, and that's kind of what really solidified our role over on the F4 and F3 ranks.
2018 F4 champion, champion of the series. Piggybacks you then into the F3 championship to be able to compete. I've seen the car differences between the F4 and the F3. I would almost put it that it's the equivalent of jumping from the USF 2000 car to an Indy Lights car, that there's not really the in-between, getting to spend the last weekend with Kent Vaccaro and his F3 car. Those Ligiers are beasts. They really are something else. And so you made the jump and then also were able to win the championship.
For sure. I mean, so like you're saying, the difference between F4 and F3 is pretty massive. You go from having very little aero to loads of aero between the JSF3 and JSF4, and then you've got basically nearly double the horsepower, 160 in the F4 car to 303 in the F3. So it's a big jump for sure. And it's definitely something that takes a little bit of time to get used to. But I think what's really great is the jump from F4 to F3 is really preparing you for that next step, whether going from F3 to Indy Lights or something different like we took going to LMP3. I think that jump and that acclimation, that driver experience is something that's really going to help them moving down the road. But for us, we were really fortunate to get a couple days of preseason testing in the 2019 season. So we actually didn't sign with Global until March, which is about a month before the start of the season.
Yeah.
So kind of had to get the ball rolling pretty quickly there. But, once we got the season started, it was pretty good out of the gate. We got, I think, a podium in our first race and then a win in our second race. So really got the ball going there.
Sometimes that teamwork really has to click. You can be the driver with all the accolades. You can have the sponsorship that has all the money. If it just doesn't click together as to your feedback, what you're giving to the team, what the team is actually providing, I find that aspect as fascinating as sometimes just the results on the track. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, even on the open wheel side, where you kind of only on the junior Formula car, there's no pit stops or anything, so it's very centered around the driver. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes where a team plays such a vital role in the driver's results, even to when they're going back to the shop at the end of the day and going through the cars and piecing through the car and everything. The truck driver making sure he's there on time, and oftentimes they're doing multiple jobs, taking care of tires, taking care of fuel. So there's so many people that make the program work. And at the end of the day, the driver is the one that gets the spotlight, but the team has such a big role in everybody's success.
So before I get into where you've taken the F3 championship and where you're going with that, I always love to give an opportunity for you to give a shout out to sponsors, those companies that have backed you up. And then I also want to talk a little bit more about the business side of it, because you probably are like me. You started with a full head of hair when you started this business, and you haven't lost as many as me, but you probably lost a couple trying to piece together rides, etc. But give a shout out to your sponsors there.
For sure. I mean, so none of this would have been possible without Stress Engineering Services. Obviously, we're in their hat, but they've been a vital role in from the F4 days, F4, F3, now LMP3. Brock Spalding's been huge for me as well. And if we talk about the sponsorship side, it's kind of a unique story there, how everything ties together. But those guys have been a huge asset for me. And, obviously all the sponsors and partners of F4 and F3, Honda Racing, HPD, Ligier Automotive, even SCCA Pro Racing and Hankook Tires, they've been really big in terms of developing me as a driver and being able to provide me opportunities for 2020 and beyond. So without them, none of this would be possible.
So you do have a solid sponsor. You have a sponsor on the side of the car. You're wearing their hat. Tell me about that relationship, how that comes together. What is it that they see in you that helps propel their brand?
I think so. For me personally, a lot of the sponsors look for different things in a way. It's kind of not like one uniform proposal or ROI in that sense. So Stress Engineering Services, for example, they're an engineering consulting company that works primarily in the oil and gas industry. So they look at, big oil rigs and say, this is a potential hazard, or you have some stress fractures here. Go into a lot deeper intel in terms of that type of stuff. But they were looking to get in the automotive market. So we're using the racing platform to introduce them to different organizations like Honda Racing HPD, like Ligier. So, you know, is there some sort of alignment between what you guys do, and is there some sort of business to business opportunity? So that's something that's big for them. Whereas you look at some other smaller companies that are on the car that are looking for purely advertising or branding, or for customer experience, where they can bring their client to the racetrack, provide them with a really unique experience and environment, and be able to do business at the racetrack as well. So it kind of depends on the different types of sponsors, but being able to utilize every facet of racing has been crucial in terms of raising sponsorship for me and ultimately getting to race. So it's been a crazy ride. So, you know, in 2016, really, we were still trying to break into the racing world, and sponsorship was something that was still pretty unique to me. Obviously, doing go-karts for a while, we've had did it just mom and pop and myself, doing it ourselves. And then when we got into racing, budgets got really big and had to go find sponsors. So I was fortunate enough to meet a gentleman through Skip Barber. He wasn't wearing any gloves. And this is going to get a long story, so you can cut me off at any time because I know we got some other stuff to go through. But
no, go for it.
Basically, the guy wasn't wearing any gloves, so I handed my gloves, started chatting with him, both from San Diego. I was like, wow, this guy's really interesting, he likes racing. So just followed up with him. He turned out to be one of my biggest sponsors, even still to this day. He introduced me to his friends by taking me to the F1 Coda event in 2016. Went to their dinner party that weekend, met the woman there that kind of hosted the party. She became a sponsor, and then she's kind of been an advocate and kind of reached out to her friend group, and all of them have kind of jumped on board, and it's kind of just spread out ever since. So it's really unique in the sense of how it all came together. And it kind of can all be pinpointed back to the Skip Barber days when I went that one gentleman, but it's kind of those types of instances that are really unique to racing, and it generates kind of a family aspect too, which is really, really cool.
I'm going to interject there, and I'm going to maybe challenge this a little bit. It's not unique to racing. That's how business is done. I've been doing that for 25 years, is that one connection, that one contact, that one follow-up. Now, you do have to sometimes go through. I had an old Army colonel one time that told me that with this much, I'm going to clean it up, with this much crap in the room, there's got to be a pony somewhere. And sometimes you do have to do a lot of shoveling or a lot of follow-up and follow through. But something I also want to point out to some of the younger drivers, or the shootout drivers, or even the parents that watch this show, listen to Dakota. He knows what the sponsor does. He knows where the connections came from. He's very quick to be able to give that rundown and talk about what is it that they're looking for. And that's something that honestly I do see some drivers missing as to what they're looking for. They're great at the sim, they're great at the track times, but being able to put it together like you, I knew when I reached out to you and you followed up directly, you were doing it the right way and you were doing it different. And that's the way business is done. But that's I'll get off my little soapbox there for a second, because I think I can help some folks along the way of doing that. So the F3 leads into through the manufacturer. Pardon me, I'm an American saying it. Ligier, being able to run the car prototype challenge. So tell me about this one.
All right, Robert. The audio just ended on my end, but let me just refresh. Let's see if this works. You got me there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I got you too. Sorry about that.
All right, so tell me about the LMP3 opportunity. MLT Motorsports, ran with them a bit last year, and then hit the ground running at Daytona this year. So talk about that opportunity.
Yeah, so basically it all started last year in May. Max from Ligier gave me a call, said that a team was looking for a driver for a one-off event type deal. And it was a really great opportunity because it gave us some time to race at Mid-Ohio, and it was a brand new experience for me. I've never raced in IMSA. It made sense because we were running, Ligier and F3. We got a Ligier and P3, and there's some continuity there. So definitely jumped on the opportunity. It was MLT's second ever event. They did Sebring, which was the second event of the year, and then this race. So I was teamed up with Dylan Murray. We ended up winning that race. It was really cool fashion. It was very similar to Daytona, where it rained the morning of, and the entire race, it was consistently drying. And by the end of the race, it was dry. So it was really, really fun event. Had some success there. And that kind of led into some further conversations with MLT, where we got the opportunity to race at Mosport, finished fourth there. And then again at the finale at Road Atlanta, and we were doing really well there, but got hit at the end with about 20 minutes to go. So unfortunately ended in DNF. But all of that kind of, came together, and we were able to put the program together for this year for a full season. And obviously winning the F3 championship, that really helped solidify that deal too. So all of it kind of came together. And again, kind of a one-off opportunity that we developed over time into turning into a more full-time gig this year.
So the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge series that runs in conjunction with the Daytona that was run at the Roar, and talk about that series and 6 races coming up this year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So it's a 6-race series. It's endurance racing format. So the primary format is an hour 45 split between true drivers. There's 2 3-hour events. The first of which was at Daytona last week. The other one's at Mosport. And basically you have, without going too deep into it, you have a bronze and a silver driver. So it's basically a pro-am category. The bronze driver has to start the race, and then the silver driver will finish. So it's a kind of a different dynamic, having to work with a teammate that shares the same car. Obviously, when I was with Global last year, I had 3 teammates throughout the year. And you work consistently with them and look over data and video and communicate with them. But working with somebody who's sharing the car is even kind of a more intimate experience, because there's compromises on both ends, because every driving style is different. Strategy comes into a big role. So, the engineers have a bigger, role in terms of who does what, and, what changes are we going to make to benefit certain drivers. And even to the extent of the mechanics, now we're doing live pit stops. So we have two guys going over the wall to change tires, a fueler, a fire bottle guy. So there's a huge, it's kind of a huge program now. It's a bigger circus in that way. And it's really cool. It's kind of taking a lot more information in. So, I got a little taste of that last year, but certainly now doing it as a full-time program, focusing a little bit more time on it, it's been a really, really cool experience.
It's a great launching point for the DPI or the other categories that will actually run the 24 Hours of Daytona. Your co-driver, Dean Baker, you talked about the bronze level, and I like to simplify that a little bit as the gentleman racers that go through it, the Daytona winning team. And I have an article that I posted about the encore that was held at Sebring at the end of the year. 47 Motorsports that you were running against. Their bronze driver, their gentleman driver, Joel Janko, is a sprite young 70 years old. He could run circles around me, that's for sure. But setting up the car and his feedback in comparison to the silver drivers that are in it, and making sure that there are some compromises that you have to do on the car in certain turns or certain ways in which the car is set up. You had a great success, I would say, at Daytona. That changing weather, having to set the car up for how long was it going to rain? Was it actually something that was going to dry? You had a 2-driver strategy. Some other teams had 3-driver strategies. So you're going to have a benefit of your pit stops, but yet you made it a little bit early. And I kind of think you were a little bit of a sitting duck at the end, as to you had pitted earlier and used up the glean on your tires as the track was drying out. Would you agree?
No, for sure. I mean, there's, as I was listening to you explain the race, it just jogged my memory of everything that went on. And it's crazy how much actually goes on in that race, because like you said, you have the weather conditions, which all of us were watching the forecast beforehand. And it looked like this, I mean, it was a massive cell that was covering probably half the state, was going diagonal across the track. So we expected it to last maybe 2 hours out of the 3 hours of the race. So we had a little extra aero in the car. We kind of tuned our car just a little bit in that sense, and it definitely paid off. Dean had a fantastic first stint. He went from 9th all the way up to 2nd.
And the gentleman driver has to run a minimum of 40 minutes. And because they are the ones that qualified the car, they also have to start the car.
Yep.
So they were in the brunt of the rain and the weather. That was kind of fun to see. Out of the 18 cars, there were probably 5 or 6 of them that had difficulties in the weather conditions, and then you hopped in about halfway in the race. So your gentleman driver carried it quite a ways once it started drying.
That was key for us too, because last year they allowed a 100-liter fuel tank. This year they limited it down to 85 liters. So around Daytona, we already get pretty poor fuel mileage. But for this race with only 85 liters, if we wanted to make a two-stop strategy, it was going to be basically impossible in the dry. But with the wet, we knew we could kind of extend it, get a little bit better fuel mileage in the rain, but also with the yellows, it should help. And Dean stayed in the car until about, I think, an hour and 10 minutes into the race, which really helped our second pit stop window. So I got in the car, did about a 55-minute stint, and then a yellow flag came out, which was perfect for our two-stop strategy, because then we knew that if I saved a little bit of fuel, we could make it all the way to the end, even if it was dry. So it kind of was very tricky, because you had guys out there like Garrett Grist, who pitted 45 minutes into the race, and they had to do a three-stop strategy. They also had issues because they couldn't get the right rear tire off. So he did a full race on one set of rain tires. But there's a lot of different strategies going on. So you didn't really know sometimes who you were racing against, because there's people on the same lap, but they're on different strategies, which meant you kind of had to race them differently versus, the guys that were coming through the field at the end, when I knew Kyle and Matt were coming up, and if they got their lap back, then it wasn't a good sign, but if it stayed green, we were okay. So it was a lot going on and a lot of information coming at you, which was really, really cool. But at the end of the day, that yellow flag at the last 30 minutes is what was our demise.
Basically, you and two other cars had a full lap lead. Kyle Kirkwood had made the pass. He was on the slicks then by that point. The track was drying more and more. And then, as you indicated, a yellow flag came out. And it was reminiscent for me watching my first time seeing Kyle run was at Gateway this past year on the oval, and he had to start in the last position, and he picked them off lap by lap by lap and was able to go with them. It had fresher tires, and all credit to Kyle. He's a hell of a driver as to being able to put it in there. But you brought it home, and a podium at Daytona. Now that's got to be something that you would feel pretty good about on the flight home.
For sure. I mean, going up on the Gatorade podium was really, really cool. I mean, it's a full-fledged out, full podium ceremony. So it was really cool. And for the team too, because they started at Sebring the year previous, they didn't get the opportunity to run at Daytona. So as a team, it was really cool to be able to go there as our first time and experience the podium and kind of continue the success that we had last year. Obviously, a lot of changes this year relative to last, with the changing of teammates and the rules, and first race weekend of the year, you never really know what's going on. But to see that consistent result throughout 2019 and now carried into 2020 was really, really big for the team.
Yeah, it was fun to see. Was a great race. One of the highlights of the Roar weekend to be able to go on, because it was actually racing that was taking place. So you'll be running the full 6 races for that season. Talk to me a little bit about then. You're going down a little bit of a path of the sports cars. But yet, this is called 33 Dreams of Indy. I'm sure you wouldn't turn down an opportunity to be in something on the road to Indy, or that path to IndyCar.
For sure. I mean, I think my heart will always be in open wheel. I absolutely love what I'm doing now in the sports car ranks. I think my career is kind of taking that path, and I would be totally happy if that were the case. But definitely, a little piece of my mind is always focused on how do I get back in an open wheel car at some point. And the racing is definitely a sport where things can pop up at any point in time. You never know what's around the next corner. So we're working hard every day to make sure those doors are open for us if they do become open. So who knows? Maybe there might be some open wheel opportunities this year for us. Maybe some one-offs. We'll see. But we're keeping that door open for sure.
You got it. Well, dream with me for a little bit. What would it be like to hear the command and to actually be able to start the Indy 500?
Yeah, that's a dream come true right there. And not only being able to hear the command and start it, but to win it, that would be huge. I think, I just want to be there. That's the biggest thing. I want to get there, and then I want to win. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what else could be. There's not much that could peak that, I don't think. Definitely not that feeling.
Have you had an opportunity to attend the Indy 500?
For sure. I mean, so when we did USF 2000, they had the smaller race at Lucas Oil for us on,
Yeah.
I think it was Friday night or Thursday night, I forget.
Yep.
So when we did that, I would always stay for the 500. So I got to go for the 100th anniversary, and I was insane. Oh my gosh, getting into the venue was crazy. And then when I was there, I was on the exit of turn 2, and
Okay.
it was crazy seeing how many people when they lined up 3x3 and took their parade laps. It was crazy seeing how many people were not only in the stands but in the infield.
Yeah.
It was a completely packed venue.
Yeah, it's very hard to describe to individuals. I've been 20 straight years, never sat in the same seats. So I've had different vantage points that go into it. On the parade lap of that 100th race, Rossi made it as far around to turn 4, and the car ran out of gas right there, and they had to come get it and push it into victory lane for him to be able to go through that. And great strategy to go through it. So I'm looking for my next 20 to go through. Dakota, absolutely fantastic to get to know you a bit more, to find out about your story. I would love to stay in touch with you over the course of the season. I'm enjoying that LMP3 prototype challenge. Those cars remind me of the old stock cars that we ran on the Northwest with the V8s and the power and being able to do that. So I'll definitely see you at Sebring, and then follow up throughout the season. Does that sound good?
No, it sounds great. No, I appreciate
Fantastic.
it a lot. And thanks for having me on. And anybody that's watching too, be sure to reach out if you have any questions and anything that we talked about, especially the young drivers out there. There's a lot to learn, and certainly when I was going up through the ranks, it was a lot to take in, and you don't really know what's going on. So if there's anybody out there that's watching this, feel free to reach out on social at Dickerson Racing or at Dakota Dickerson Racing on Facebook. We'd be happy to help out.
Yeah, most definitely. That works. That works both ways. I know what I know. I know what I don't know, and I'll put you in contact with those that do. And Dakota and I scheduled this around one of his coaching sessions that he's also doing, and that keeps him sharp and on the wheel and going through that. So Dakota, best of luck to you. See you in Sebring. I wish there wasn't as much time between races on the prototype challenge, but that makes you just that much more anxious to go respect the bumps at Sebring and race here in my home state. So until next time, please ask you to subscribe our YouTube channel. All these are available on video, but we're also on every major podcast player, the Apple, Google, the iHeartRadio, Spotify, you name it. Technically, we've got it covered. And I know that a lot of race fans are going to be traveling here as they go to races. Add us to your rotation. We sure would appreciate it. And so until next time, keep dreaming. Dakota, thank you so much.
No worries.
Hope you enjoyed this video from 33 Dreams of Indy. It would mean the world to me if you would click subscribe so that you could be notified of any new videos that come along.